Today, BMW announced the second model in their R18 range, the R18 Classic. This is a more touring-focused take on the heavyweight Boxer twin platform, so in today's video we'll take a look at the changes they've made and see if it's got what it takes for long-distance riding. But before we get started, if you're new here and you want to see all of the latest new bike releases for 2021, then please do remember to hit subscribe. We're coming into the super busy time of year for new motorcycles, and I'll be covering as many of them as I possibly can, so subscribe to see all of the new bikes as soon as those videos go live. Of course, this isn't the first time that I've covered the R18. There are links in the description to my full rundown of the specs, as well as a first ride on the R18 First Edition. The newly announced R18 Classic shares the majority of those specs, but here's a quick rundown to refresh your memory. It's powered by a 1.8-litre Boxer twin, which is the biggest they've ever produced, and it looks absolutely monstrous from both the front and the rider's view. It puts out a peak of 91 horsepower at 4,750 RPM, which is comparable with the big American cruisers that this motorcycle hopes to take some market share from. That might not sound like much for an 1800cc engine, but really it's built for torque. A peak of 158 Nm arrives at just 3,000 RPM, so you barely need to rev it to generate some seriously strong pulling power, and more than 150 Nm are available all the way from 2,000 to 4,000 RPM. The design is heavily influenced by the R5, which BMW launched back in 1936, and there are lots of little clues dotted around the chassis. Fork sleeves are used to give the front end that classic look, whilst the rear shock is hidden away under the saddle to give the impression of an old school hardtail, a trick used by Harley on their Softails and Triumph on their Bobber. It uses a double loop steel tube frame and a swing arm that encloses the rear axle, again echoing the R5, and there's even an exposed drive shaft which looks absolutely awesome. Don't be fooled by the retro appearances though, as the hardware and electronics are pretty up to date. In terms of braking, there are twin discs at the front and they use BMW's integral ABS system. The partial version fitted to this bike means that while the front brake lever sends pressure to both the front and rear calipers, reducing braking distance, the rear brake pedal operates just the rear caliper, which can be helpful when performing low-speed maneuvers. Despite a fairly minimal clock, there are a bunch of standard electronic features including 2 riding modes, keyless ignition, LED lighting, traction control, and engine drag torque control, which effectively acts like a slipper clutch, whilst there are also some neat optional extras like a reverse mode and hill start control, both of which might come in handy with a curb weight of 345 kilograms. Honestly, I really enjoyed the time I spent riding this bike recently. It is a big old machine, but it's got plenty of zip with all that torque available, and it handles surprisingly well on twisty roads thanks to some relatively firm suspension. But the first edition was lacking a couple of features for me that would have made it a truly great long-distance motorcycle, and it appears that some of these shortcomings have been addressed by BMW with this second R18 release. First up, there's a large windscreen, which is an absolute must if you're doing any length of time on the motorway, providing some much needed wind protection. There's also a passenger seat because touring is always more fun if you take someone along for the ride, but it does look fairly minimal, and I'd be looking to the accessories catalogue for a backrest to make it feel more secure under acceleration. The Classic also comes with a pair of saddlebags in black leather with some chrome buttons and rivets on them, which certainly gives it a bit more of an American aesthetic. Interestingly, they've had to swap out the fishtail exhaust for something a little more straight in order to clear the saddlebags underneath. The fishtail exhaust on the first edition was somewhat divisive because it had quite a lot more bulk than the one that looked so good on the original concept bike, probably owing to emissions regulations. Now, I thought it actually looked much better in the flesh, but perhaps some of you prefer these straight versions. Let me know which one you prefer in the comments below. All 3 of these items are removable, so the windscreen, passenger seat and saddlebags, in case you want that more stripped back cruiser look, which offers a nice bit of flexibility. Up front there are some additional LED lights which may help to both see and be seen, enhancing safety, but again they give it a look which is more in line with a Harley or Indian than it is the original R5 that inspired the first edition. There are a bunch of front wheel sizes available for the R18 if you check the accessories catalogue, but this one one comes with the smaller 16-incher, presumably to offer a bit of extra comfort on those long touring stints owing to the extra volume in the tyre. But perhaps the biggest addition for the R18 Classic is cruise control fitted as standard. In my brief review of the R18 First Edition, this was one of my biggest disappointments and I couldn't really understand why they hadn't fitted it. It's a cruiser after all, and it's not like BMW don't have the tech. In fact, they fit it on bikes that are pretty much half the price like the F900R. Maybe it was left off the First Edition to differentiate this classic model, as otherwise it might have looked like it was just an accessories catalogue special. But all in all, it looks like a decent package that will definitely improve comfort at motorway speeds, and there are still all of the same parts in the accessories catalogue available as the First Edition, which could enhance comfort still further, like heated grips, a cornering headlight, and some other seat options. There are also the same visual components like the machined and two-tone Roland Sands design cases, covers, and levers if you want to give your R18 a bit of a distinctive look. Like the First Edition, the Classic looks like it'll be available in just the one black colour scheme with white pinstripes, and while I do think it looks pretty great and gives it a certain BMW-ness, I am looking forward to seeing some other colour variants available, as I thought the R18/2 concept looked particularly good in red. In terms of pricing, the R18 Classic will come in at just under 21 grand, which is a couple more than the standard edition at 18,995, and it's due in dealers from spring of 2021. As always, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below. Do you think this is more of a serious contender for the big touring Harleys and Indians? It certainly looks like it to me, but I do wonder if we'll see something with a more substantial fairing and hard luggage in the coming months. This leaked copyright image suggests that that might be the case. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.